C1. You are listening at FameTV.info. Ah. Prince. Be gentle. The woman's watery moans came out from the carved bed. Xu Jingrong kneeled on the cold floor in her thin clothes as tears rolled down her face and onto the floor, wetting the tiles on the floor. Today was the wedding night between her and King Jing, Situbai. She had loved Situbai for 3 years, and now she thought that he was just a lover with a concubine that was as gentle as water, but never in her dreams did she think of that. Lifting the veil and taking off the phoenix crown, Situbai actually made her kneel on the ground in disgust. As for him, he had brought the side concubine, Wen Ruyan, onto their bridal bed and turned the world upside down in front of her. Ambiguous moans, accompanied by the sound of fiercely colliding flesh, and the unbearably loud creaking of a large bed repeatedly resounded in her ears, delaying her heart. Tears gushed out like a fountain, and his heart was filled with despair. Situbai, if you don't love me, then why did you agree to marry me? Why do you have to humiliate me when you marry me? After an unknown period of time, the sounds on the bed finally calmed down and the rustling sounds of clothes being put on could be heard. After a short while, a slender hand reached over and grabbed her chin, forcing her to raise her head. With teary eyes, she saw Situbai wearing a white robe as he indifferently looked at her. Looking over his shoulder, he saw Wen Ruyan dressed in a red jumpsuit. Her fair skin was full of red marks, her hair was messy, her cheeks were bright red, and the corners of her eyes were filled with an intoxicating smile. The pain in her heart felt like it was being torn apart. She forced herself to retract her gaze and looked at Situbai, who was standing coldly in front of her. It was still that handsome face that caused her to be obsessed with sleep, but it was not as gentle as she had imagined. Instead, it was filled with frost. Even though he treated her like this, she actually hated him for not getting up. After all, this was a man that she had been infatuated with for 3 years. She remembered the love he had felt for her when he had sent her the message, remembered the words he had written in the letter that had made her heart beat fast. She had always been looking forward to his wedding night, always thinking that it would definitely be a loving concubine that would treat him with gentleness. Why did he do this to her? Why did he give her bridal chamber to another woman? Xu Jingrong looked at the handsome face in front of her in confusion, then said with a voice filled with despair and sorrow, "Why? Why are you doing this to me?" Situbai looked at Xu Jingrong, who was kneeling on the ground, with eyes that were like lightning with disgust. "Why? Xu Jingrong, don't you know what you are? Do you think this king would really marry a malicious woman like you, who would put her own sister to death for the sake of being rich and powerful? What does your highness mean by this?" Yi Zichen looked at Situbai in shock. "You're still playing dumb. Let me ask you, what did Xingrong do wrong in the end for you to put her to death like this?" Xu Jingrong didn't understand why Situbai asked about Xu Xingrong's death, and even blamed it on herself. She subconsciously replied, "Xingrong passed away, I'm very sad." Before she could finish her sentence, Situbai interrupted her, feeling sad. "Heh, this is the first time this king has heard of the murderer being sad." "What murderer?" "Prince, what are you talking about?" "Prince Xingrong. She accidentally fell into the water, caught in the cold, and left." "Shut up." Situbai reached out his hand to cover her collar. "Xu Jingrong, you're still lying even now. Do you really think that all the evil things you've done will vanish like smoke after Xingrong left? Miss Xu, if you don't want others to know, don't do it yourself. You probably didn't know that the ugly things you've done would one day be made known to the world, right?" When Ruyan, who had been leaning on the headboard, got off the bed. Her clothes were half open and her face was filled with elegance. "Xingrong falling into the water was your handiwork. You intentionally sent Xingrong into the water in the middle of winter so that she would catch a cold and lay heavily on the bed. You even let someone poison her medicine when she was gravely ill, resulting in Xingrong's tragic death." "Nonsense. Wen Ruyan, lying is a form of retribution. The one who deserves retribution is you. It's you, you wicked woman." Situbai grabbed Xu Jingrong by her collar and lifted her up from the ground. "Xu Jingrong, do you know why I agreed to marry you? I married you to avenge Xingrong. After throwing down those cold and heartless words, Situbai fiercely threw Xu Jingrong onto the ground as if he was throwing something disgusting. Xu Jingrong fell heavily onto the green brick floor. A heart-wrenching pain hit her, causing her mind to go blank. Why did Situbai say that he would take revenge for Xingrong? First of all, Xingrong's death was an accident in itself. Even if Xingrong's death was a trap, Situbai and Xingrong were not related to each other. There was no reason for him to take revenge for Xingrong. Right, before she could understand what was going on, Situbai Han Che's bone-piercing voice rang beside her ears, "Someone come. Drag this wicked woman down and throw her in the back garden to enjoy the lake." Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.